Bill. We're here at Alcatraz, a music festival. First of all, are you satisfied with Torn Archeries? I mean, I can imagine there was quite an amount of pressure for having a new album out, both in high expectations in the press and with fans. You have the feeling you lived up to the expectations?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, we just focused on making the album, writing the material. Yeah, I mean, your head will explode if you think too far ahead, like how will people receive this? It's just a case of getting on with making the music you want to make at that moment and doing it to the best of your ability, crafting it, getting the recording rights, and then it's in the lap of the gods, you know. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, satisfied. I'm not sure if I would use that word, but I like most of the records. I prefer that record to Surgical Steel, so I guess that's sort of satisfied. Yeah.
What's the main difference between Surgical Steel and this one?
I think there's a number of differences. I think there's more dynamics on this record because Surgical is very breathless. I mean, it's very intense. That's just what came out at the time. This one with different kind of styles and feels we wanted to put across with the music. And also with the production, I think is a little bit more organic, perhaps. Mm-hmm. But that's just me. I could be wrong.
Yeah. Okay. As a band that has been out there for so long and touring for so long, I suppose you know what works on a stage and what lifts a crowd up. Is that something you kept somehow in the back of your minds? You said.
In what sense?
How the people would receive it. What works on stage if you write a song, if you create a song, because of all the.
Yeah, I mean, no, you're dead right because
experience you have.
Yeah, I mean, off the back of Surgical, we did about 5 years touring. You know, not just tours, loads of festivals, obviously as well. So after a while, that does affect your musical DNA because when you go to work on new material, you're sort of not thinking, you're feeling differently. It's like what's going to reach the back of a room, what's going to reach the back of the club. So at least that's how me and Dan felt about it when we started working on the tunes.
Yeah. Okay. You and Jeff are the only remaining members of the original Carcass. How does it work? You mentioned Dan. Is everybody equally involved in the writing process?
I would say so. I mean, as the guitar player, I bring in the riffs, but that's just the beginning. You know, I mean, Jeff's got a lot to say about arrangements, and Dan does too. I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, it goes through the Carcass mincer, you know, so the raw material I bring in is often changed quite drastically, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice. And Jeff does the artwork as well, I guess?
No, I mean, obviously, you know, he's the lyricist, the front man, the manager of the band really as well. But the artwork was done by a Polish friend of his, whose name I can't pronounce.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, Dan and myself had no involvement. I mean, it was just like presented. Oh, here we go. That's the cover. Okay, cool. Let's go.
Yeah.
I have no idea what the theme was or anything. But
but it stands out. It's beautiful. It's with the white. It's it's totally different. And then the COVID period. Like just before that, you were touring intensely, doing a new album, and then the world seemed to stop turning. How did you experience that as a band?
I think for once we all agreed on this. It was quite nice when it started. You know, it was like a really welcome break because it was really hard to draw a line. Like, when does this Surgical touring campaign stop, and then the new album and that campaign starts? So this forced us to have a break, like every band pretty much. But in our case, we were sort of grateful for that.
Yep.
Drew a little bit of a line in the sand for us. And then, of course, later on, I can't remember when, but it started to become more existential and dark and whatever. But the initial few weeks, you know, I was one of the lucky ones. It didn't really affect me in a bad way. So I was quite happy about it, strangely.
Yeah, well, a welcome relief, as you said, of course. An average day on the tour, what does that look like for you guys?
Wow, We've only done one tour since we come back, because I mean, mostly it's festivals like this, so we're doing like 2 festivals over the course of a long weekend. But yeah, the one tour we did was US, and that was like, I don't know, 3 weeks. But essentially it's like you're on a bus, you drive all day or whatever, get to the place, set up, play the show, get in your bunk, and it just starts all over again. I mean, it's incredibly repetitive and potentially quite boring.
Boring,
actually.
yeah.
I'm not saying it's always that. Like sometimes it's fun. Right? No, actually it is fun. But I just mean, the glamour bit doesn't really happen very often, especially not with us, because we're not that kind of band.
That's what I was going to ask. Over all these years, looking back, what for you personally are some of the highlights and some of the worst moments you had with Carcass coming up?
Highlights, that's easy. Playing with Iron Maiden in Mexico, playing with Slayer across the USA. Those would be the two obvious ones. Lowlights, God, there are so many. I think, when we were towards the end of our original incarnation, we were involved with a major label, Columbia and stuff.
Yeah.
And that turned sour really quickly. So I'd say, off the top of my head, that's maybe the low point, because you just realised not only is this so-called business relationship finished, the band's kind of finished as well. But, there's a good ending to that story, because later we sort of got back together and did stuff again. So, I mean, I think it was how it was meant to be, because we're not the kind of band that should be on a major label. The whole thing was kind of an accident, and we just ran with it. But, it didn't feel right.
Okay, Nowadays, well, I was going to say, we don't have any TV shows anymore with metal, like Headbangers Ball.
Yeah.
As a metalhead, you all have to figure it out by yourself on social media. Do you consider yourselves lucky that you were on the right place, on the right time, when your first albums came out?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I mean, it's a lot easier to innovate when a genre is just kind of starting up. I mean, there's some incredible bands out there that, they're way more proficient players than we will ever be. But, how many years have passed since this music kind of started? So it's really harder to make a mark at this stage, So yeah, timing's a big thing, timing and placement.
Yeah. What's the most interesting What's the most interesting song for you personally to play live on stage from Torn Arteries, and why?
I guess, I'm just going to answer the first thing that comes into my head.
Yeah.
So it'll be Scythe's Remorseless Swing. Just, I guess, because I still like the tune. It's to me, one of the better things on the record, and I just like the way it flows. And it has a kind of a slightly softer start. We don't tend to do softness. It tends to be just on 10 the whole time. So it was a challenge just to not mess that up really live.
Yeah.
It still is. You'll probably hear that later. But, yeah.
And then, do you keep up what's out there music-wise? Not necessarily metal, or do you go see other bands on festivals, for example?
Well, this is a good one for us, because there's lots of bands we want to see.
Yeah. Like what?
The two that comes into mind straight away is like Exodus and Death Angel. Both great live bands, and also people we like anyway. There's tons. It's really weird. There's so many people we know here. Like Testament, all those guys. And,
yeah. So you're gonna see some bands, and otherwise, musically, do you keep up?
I'm maybe the worst offender in the band. Jeff keeps up quite a bit. I think he finds the whole metal thing, contemporary metal and the business really fascinating. Dan keeps up because he's drumming obsessive, so he always wants to know who's out there playing crazy stuff on drums. So he definitely keeps up. And James, our new guitar player, yeah, he's probably similar to me, but I loosely keep up through other people.
Yeah. Okay. You have a solid fan base. You did a lot of touring over the past years. Do you still get nervous sometimes to play?
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think. It's not so much nerves as in I'm terrified of going on stage. It's more like worries about equipment, because we're using some rented backline that's not very good, or just not feeling in the zone. So it's like, I've been doing gigs since I was, 15, 16, So I'm okay with the concept of doing that, but it's more like sometimes you just don't. I'm not there yet, you know.
Yeah.
Usually a couple of drinks takes the edge off.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always work.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Understand. How many new songs are you going to play tonight?
Good question. Because we've had to cut our set short. You know, from what we did in Partisan in Germany yesterday, that was a long set, and I think we've had to remove a whole bunch. But I think it's at least 2, maybe 3.
Maybe 3. Yeah.
Because we really want to represent the record.
Yeah.
I mean, in my view, there's the best songs of the record aren't being played live, but that's a whole other story. You know, it's just because I think people expect you to play the songs that have videos, and the songs that have videos aren't necessarily the best songs on the album. They're just songs that the label believed in because they're a little bit more conservative, and they're worried about pushing stuff out there that's a little bit too different from the previous record.
I see.
You know,
Yeah.
so that drips through into our set list.
Yeah.
Annoyingly.
Well, that was my next question. How did you decide on a set list? Well, you've answered that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big compromise. I mean, none of us are ever happy. It's some kind of thing that's just battled out between the band members.
Yeah. Okay, well, that was it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're looking forward to the show tonight.
Thank
and,
you.
I wish you a lot of fun tonight.
Fab. Yeah, well, we'll do our best or our worst, whichever.